Welcome to this episode of bait processing. We are from the previous episode where we talked about waste sourcing, processing and storage. BSF rearing, you need to imitate the environmental conditions where they survive, and they survive in dump sites where there is strong odor. So for one to achieve the rearing, you need a bait or an attractant that is very strong in odor. So we are going to demonstrate how we prepare the bait to attract the females in the cage to lay eggs. For odor production, you will need beans, you will need the substrate, which is an organic substrate, you will need poultry waste, and you will need a polythene cover to cover in case of rain. For our case, we have potato waste and we have chicken waste, which we mix. Reason why we have chicken waste and potato waste is because we need to ferment the bait to get strong odor for the flies to come and lay their eggs in the egg collection devices. After the thorough mixing of the two wastes, we then need to contain them in a bin or an airtight container. So make sure the container is tightly corked so that fermentation occurs. This is left between 3 days and 1 week to ferment and give us that strong odor that we are looking for. We had our bait that we had prepared before. What one needs to do is to scoop a small portion like this, put in a basin, then introduce the egg oviposition devices, which we have in different forms. You can either decide to use paper cartons, which have small spaces. You can use a plastic electrical conduit, which has these crevices, or pieces of wood joined together, but leaving small spaces in between where the females will come and lay eggs. These devices are placed on the basin where the bait did not reach. This can either be placed in the field, like in the farm, for a period of 3 days to 1 week if one does not have an established colony. It will attract the flies from the wild to come and lay eggs. In that way, one is able to start their BSF colony. If you have an established colony, this is taken to an adult cage which has males and females that have mated, and the female will be in a position to come and lay their eggs on the several egg collection devices that we have presented. We are going to take a short break, and after the break, we are going to take the prepared bait and the egg devices into an adult laying cage. Remember to subscribe. Welcome back. We are now in our greenhouse, our rearing greenhouse, ready to present the prepared bait and the egg collection devices into the larve cages. You need to house the black soldier flies and their larvae in a greenhouse like what we are in. It's made up of a sun cover that covers the roof, it covers the walls, greenhouse net ceiling, which is fixed as a ceiling, and also like the inner wall of the greenhouse to stop flies and rodents from coming in. Our greenhouse has windows that are opened when it is too hot, and they are rolled down when it is too cold. That's how we do our temperature checks. We also need rearing trays, which can be in form of plastic containers like this. You can also use plastic basins like this. These are local materials that are cheap, or you can buy plastic trays like this if you are going commercial. You also need sieve like this one. This is made from a bucket that is cut, and a mosquito net is fixed at the bottom using some glue. This is used for harvesting the larvae. We also need some plastic containers like this to water our insects. Adult black soldier flies do not feed, but they can take water if they wish. You could use cotton wool or some wet cloth to water the insects. We put some water in our bowl and introduce cotton wool like this, so that the fries do not drown in the water, but they can suck the water from the container. Another important item you need in the black soldier fry layering are these larva cages you can see on this section of the greenhouse. They can be made up of metallic material like what we have here. This can also be replaced with wood, and you can have the tire system that we have here or a single unit. You demarcate with mesh wire in between so that you have the upper cage and the lower cage, and then the greenhouse net that is used to contain the males and the females to make larvae. We call them larva cages because this is where the male and female meat. For a simple layering unit made up of local materials, about 50,000 Kenya shillings is enough. But for a farmer who would want to go commercial, around 180,000 shillings is good to go. Back to our attractant. We now need to introduce our attractant to the larva cages and then remove the one that has been there before so that we harvest the eggs. First thing is to shake off the sleeve so that the flies that have been resting on the sleeve can go back to the cage to prevent them from escaping. Then in the cage, previously we had introduced our attractant, and now we need to remove it so that we can introduce the new prepared attractant into the cage. So we brush off the flies that are sitting on the basin that has the old attractant, and then we get our basin out. Those are the eggs that we have managed to harvest within 2 days. It's a bit cold, so the flies are not very active. Then we need to introduce the new bait into the cage. Give them some water. So we remove the old moist cotton wool or piece of cloth and introduce the freshly prepared water for the flies to quench their thirst. The adult female, after it has laid its eggs, its role comes to an end because these flies live for about 10 days and the female lays just once in its lifetime. A single female is able to give between 500 to 1,000 eggs, and it lays only once in its lifetime. We constantly need to introduce pupae every time we are harvesting eggs. After we have put the water and the new bait, we need to tie back our sleeve so that the flies do not escape, and leave the attractant there for 2 or 3 days before we harvest the eggs again. Now we need to incubate them into our previously prepared waste. Before we incubate the eggs on the substrate, we need to sort out the egg devices. Those without, they can be recycled, that is, we can introduce them again into the cage. But those with eggs, we need to place them on the substrate. Normally what happens in this section, when the egg collection devices have eggs, we place them on the substrate with the eggs facing up, because any water that gets into the eggs makes the eggs abort. That is, the eggs will not hatch when they are touched by water. We inspect the substrate to see whether there are flies that laid directly on the bait, so that we also collect the egg. After we have placed all the eggs on the substrate, we now need to label our tray or our container so that we are able to batch our larvae. We have 2 important dates that are indicated on the label: the egg collection date and the hatch date. That is when the larvae will hatch. After 3 days, we will come back to the tray, inspect whether the larvae have hatched, and mark the hatch date. You can use a color code for every egg collection date that you have. You can have green, red, and all that. So from this step, the incubated eggs are taken to the larvarium, where the process of larvae feeding and harvesting start. This marks the end of this episode. Look out for the next episode where we talk about larva feeding, rearing, and harvesting Remember to subscribe.